Lectures on First Meditation, Part 2, Doubting Sensory Knowledge. In the last video, we studied Descartes' method of hyperbolic doubt. It's time now to see how this method is applied by Descartes. Scholars sometimes say that the method of hyperbolic doubt results in 3 waves of doubt. Each wave of doubt is a conceptually distinct part of first meditation. In this video, we're going to focus on the first 2 waves of doubt, both of which have to do with the senses. Then in the next video, we'll study the 3rd wave of doubt, which has to do with the intellect. And we will see that the waves of doubt become progressively more exaggerated. Let's start looking at the first wave of doubt by studying the text. Descartes says on page 12, "Whatever I have up till now accepted as most true, I have acquired either from the senses or through the senses. But from time to time, I have found that the senses deceive me, and it is prudent never to trust completely those who have deceived us even once." Now let's just read on the next little bit here, because it'll help us understand what kinds of sensations Descartes is thinking about in this passage. He says, "Yet, although the senses occasionally deceive us with respect to objects which are very small or in the distance, there are many other beliefs about which doubt is quite impossible." So, in the original paragraph that we read, Descartes is focusing on sensations of things that are very small or in the distance. Let's try to write this wave of doubt as an argument. It would go like this. The first premise would say, the senses deceive me concerning things that are very small or in the distance. The second premise, it is prudent not to trust something that deceives me even once, so therefore, I have reason to doubt the senses concerning things that are very small or in the distance. Now there's a couple of things to notice here about this argument. First, the kinds of sensations we're talking about don't have to be visual sensations. There are lots of times when I'm deceived by my senses, not because I'm seeing something that is far away, but maybe because I'm hearing something that's far away, and I can't quite tell what it is, or more accurately, I might say, I think it's one thing, but then I realize when I get closer the sound is coming from something else. The second important thing to notice is that this doubt is not very exaggerated at all. We don't trust our senses very much when it comes to things that are very far away or very small. To use one of Descartes' own examples, I might very well judge that a building that's off in the distance is square when in fact when I get up close, it actually turns out to be a round tower. But still, this does give me some reason for doubting my senses, at least when it comes to things that are very small or far away. Now Descartes says, but wait, surely even if I have reasons for doubting my senses about things that are very far away or very small, I don't have any reasons for doubting the things that are right up close. Do I? Could I have any reason for doubting that I'm holding a piece of paper right now? Wouldn't I have to be insane to doubt that I'm holding a piece of paper? Well, let's have a look at what Descartes says in the text. He says, maybe I would have to be insane to think that I can doubt my senses when it comes to things that are up close. I shouldn't take insane people as a model for good thinking. He says, but such people are insane, and I would be thought equally mad if I took anything from them as a model for myself. And then he says something kind of interesting. He says, a brilliant piece of reasoning, with an exclamation mark, to indicate that he's being sarcastic. That's not a brilliant piece of reasoning at all. Why not? As if I were not a man who sleeps at night and regularly has all the same experiences while asleep as madmen do when awake. Indeed, sometimes even more improbable ones. How often, asleep at night, am I convinced of just such familiar events, that I'm here in my dressing gown sitting by the fire, when in fact I'm lying undressed in bed. Yet at the moment, my eyes are certainly wide awake when I look at this piece of paper. I shake my head and it is not asleep. As I stretch out and feel my hand, I do so deliberately, and I know what I'm doing. All this would not happen with such distinctness to someone asleep. Indeed! Exclamation mark, again to indicate sarcasm. As if I did not remember other occasions when I have been tricked by exactly similar thoughts while asleep. As I think about this more carefully, I see plainly that there are never any sure signs by means of which being awake can be distinguished from being asleep. The result is that I begin to feel dazed, and this very feeling only reinforces the notion that I might be asleep. This very, very famous passage contains what scholars often call the dreaming argument. Let's try to write out the argument in argument form. It's going to have two premises and a conclusion, the way I'm going to write it out. I've seen scholars write it out containing as many as 8 premises, but we're going to try to keep it simple. The argument might be written out like this. First premise is, my immediate sensory experiences while dreaming are exactly like those while awake. Second premise, there is no other way to distinguish dreaming from being awake. Therefore, my immediate sensory experiences cannot be trusted. I have reason to doubt them. Now let's talk about this argument a little bit before we consider its consequences. First, notice that I've paraphrased the argument from what's in the text. And I've paraphrased it in such a way that I'm trying to condense a lot of what Descartes is saying into very concise expressions. But that means that I have to explain the way I've written it out. For example, the phrase immediate sensory experiences is very important. I'm using that to paraphrase the kinds of experiences that are spatially and temporally proximate, because those are the examples that Descartes uses in the passage that we just read. Descartes talks about holding a piece of paper. He talks about feeling the heat from the fire. All of those experiences are experiences of things that seem to be spatially and temporally proximate. He talks about reaching out with one hand to touch his other hand. Also a sensation of something that seems to be spatially and temporally proximate or close by. And what he's remarking about those kinds of experiences is that those sensations while I'm dreaming are qualitatively identical to their corresponding sensations while I'm awake. So in other words, if I dream that I'm holding a piece of paper, it feels like I'm actually holding a piece of paper. That's why dreams can be so frightening. Because if I dream that someone is chasing me with a knife, it seems to me as if it really is true that someone is chasing me with a knife. The qualitative features of our dream sensations are indistinguishable from the qualitative features of our waking sensations. And that's what I'm trying to capture with this first premise, what Descartes is saying in the text. Now the second premise is very important to the argument as well, and it requires a little bit of explanation. The way I've paraphrased it is that there is no other way to distinguish dreaming from being awake. Now what is this other way, no other way, supposed to mean? Well, what I'm trying to capture here is that Descartes says that if I focus exclusively on the sensations, I can't tell the difference between being awake and dreaming because waking sensations are qualitatively identical to dreaming sensations. But in addition to that, I don't have any other way of figuring out whether I'm dreaming or whether I'm awake. And that's a very important part of the argument. Because it didn't have to be that way. It just happens to be that way, but it didn't have to be that way. If, for example, each and every time I had a dream sensation, it was accompanied by a very specific kind of emotional feeling, I could use that emotional feeling as a sign that I'm dreaming. But there is no such thing. There isn't a single non-sensory experience that always and only attaches to my dream sensations, or always and only attaches to my waking sensations. And since the waking and the dreaming sensations are qualitatively identical, I therefore have no way to tell them apart. Now, if I can't tell apart on any given occasion whether I'm dreaming that I'm holding a piece of paper or I'm actually holding a piece of paper, then I cannot trust these immediate sensory experiences. I have reasons to doubt them. This will turn out to have rather dramatic consequences, according to Descartes. First, as a result of the dreaming argument, I have reason to doubt all knowledge verified by sensory experience. And this is very big. This is a very big consequence, because it means that as a result of the dreaming argument, I have reason to doubt all scientific knowledge. Because in science, all of the evidence comes from the senses. We can illustrate this point rather dramatically by considering the following imaginary homework assignment. Suppose I were to ask you to take a copy of your Cal Poly catalog and go through it with a red marker so that on every page where the knowledge displayed in that discipline was something that we should doubt as a result of the dreaming argument, you write on that page, "I doubt it." Let's pretend we can do this, and we start with A. I don't know what's on the first page of the catalog, agri something or other. I doubt it, right? Because anything in those areas of knowledge, in ag science or whatever, is going to be verified by the senses. And the dreaming argument tells me that I cannot rely on my senses because I have reason to doubt them. B, biology, I doubt it. C, chemistry, I doubt it. D, dairy science, I doubt it. Almost everything in the catalog becomes doubted as a result of the dreaming argument. There's perhaps 2 exceptions, one for sure. And the one exception for sure of an area of knowledge that is not doubted as a result of the dreaming argument is mathematics. Because for Descartes, our evidence for the truth of mathematical theorems does not come from the senses, it comes from the intellect. And the intellect is not called into doubt as a result of the dreaming argument. The second area that escapes doubt from the dreaming argument is philosophy, of course. Still, our level of doubt here is becoming quite exaggerated. If the dreaming argument works, then we have reason for doubting all scientific knowledge. The second important consequence of the dreaming argument is that we have reason to doubt the existence of the physical world, even the existence of our very own bodies. Because Descartes says, look, at this stage, the main source of evidence for my belief about the existence of physical objects comes from the senses. If you were to ask me the question, why do you believe that the table in front of you exists? I would say, because I can see it, I can touch it, I can bang on it and hear it. But all of those things are sensations. What if I'm dreaming that I'm seeing a table? What if I'm dreaming that I'm banging on it? What if I'm dreaming that I'm hearing the sound from rapping on the table? All the sensations would be the same if there was no table there at all. All the sensations would be the same if my mind was just a mind in a universe that contains no physical objects, and my mind happened to be dreaming all of these experiences that seem to be experiences of physical objects that I experience with my senses. And so, as a result of the dreaming argument, I have reasons to doubt the existence of the physical world. Well, that's a pretty fancy piece of reasoning to remember, and there's more subtleties to discuss. I know you'll want to talk about whether the dreaming argument is a strong argument or not, and we'll talk about this when we get together again. But in the meantime, let's just notice that what Descartes goes on to do after introducing the dreaming argument is say this. On page 13, he says, well, let's suppose then that I am dreaming. I'm going to call this the dreaming hypothesis, in contrast to the dreaming argument. We want to be really careful about the difference between the two. The dreaming argument is an argument. It's a piece of reasoning. Whereas the dreaming hypothesis is an hypothesis, something that we accept provisionally that may or may not turn out to be true. Descartes accepts the dreaming hypothesis because he wants to remember what he's supposed to doubt. And so instead of having to come back the next day and work his way through the dreaming argument all over again, he's just going to say, oh yeah, I remember, I'm supposed to be dreaming. If I were dreaming, could it be that I'm experiencing a table that looks just like the one that's in front of me? Yes. Oh, okay, I remember, I'm supposed to doubt that. And so the dreaming hypothesis is a mnemonic device, a device that helps the thinker remember what to doubt. And we're going to see that the third wave of doubt has a structure that very closely parallels this second wave of doubt. We're going to see an argument first, followed by an hypothesis.